Hi, and welcome to the Soul and Survival podcast with Grant and Louise Bentley. We have run the Victorian College of Classical Homeopathy since 1995. We are both qualified practicing homeopaths, and Grant is also a naturopath. Together, we discovered a link between energy and facial structure based on traditional ideas from homeopathy that have roots going back 200 years. This project is called Homeopathic Facial Analysis, or HFA for short, and has been the cornerstone of clinical diagnosis and training courses since 1999. Between us, we have written and produced 7 HFA books, including Soul and Survival. Soul and Survival is the philosophy of energy influencing matter and how this energy forms individual facial structure, our unconscious drives and fears, our life patterns, and universal time cycles.
Hi everybody, and welcome to this next Soul and Survival podcast. I hope everyone's well, and welcome to you, Louise.
Hi Grant, how are you going today?
Not too bad, thank you very much. What's on the agenda?
Okay, I think we mentioned last time or the time before that we're going to also get into a book that's now, I think it came out in 2012 or 2013, How Aphorism 27 Changed the World. And you wrote it because you wanted to talk to the classical homeopaths, the ones who think facial analysis is like tea leaf reading or something like that, which of course it's not. It's a very profound thing, facial analysis. Energy to matter, matter to energy. It's the principles of homeopathy. But you know that many of them aren't interested or not willing to even look. So you wrote this book. Some people have said this is one of your best books, and I could agree. We haven't looked at it for a long time, so I just flipped it open at chapter 5, which is called Does Nature Always Know Best? So just a reminder, this was written for classic people who want to think about how HFA actually sinks in with what Hahnemann was saying.
And is there any reason behind Chapter 5, or this is purely random?
Purely random. I just saw a screenshot and I opened it and it was Chapter 5, and I thought, oh yeah, I'll open it again, Chapter 5. That sounds interesting. So let me read a little bit and then let's see what you say, because you haven't probably written anything on this topic for, 12 or 13 years, which is interesting in itself. So it starts with a quote, and I know you love putting quotes at the beginning of chapters. It's a nice thing to do. So the quote is, I believe that there is a subtle magnetism in nature which, if we unconsciously yield to it, will direct us aright. And that's Henry David Thoreau. Then you go on to write, the essence of what is captured in these words by Thoreau is what most contemporary natural/alternative practitioners hold as the foundation of treatment. It is the underpinning philosophy behind most alternative medicines. That is, nature knows best, and that the best medicine will always be the removal of the obstacle that stands in her way. Or put another way, it is nature and nature alone that can only provide true healing. All we can do is help facilitate that process. While studying naturopathy, this principle of the perfect healing power of nature was the bedrock of our methodology. Cleanse the body of as many impurities as possible so Mother Nature can do what she does best, creating happy, healthy human beings. Many homeopaths also follow this nature knows best path. Some homeopathic writers suggest that cravings, like those seen in remedies like calc carb with its craving for chalk, dirt, or other indigestibles, is simply nature at work. It may be beyond our capacity to understand how and why she creates these cravings, but they are supposedly always in our best interests. Human beings may not understand what could possibly be important or healing about the chalk, plaster, or dirt that is being craved, but nature knows what she is doing. What the body needs will be found in these indigestibles, so the craving is created. At least that's the theory. Now, obviously, you go on. That's only 3 paragraphs into a whole chapter. But yeah, what do you think about that on reflection?
I think it's fine, providing that everything is working the way that it should be working. And I think that's probably the point where I'm going to head towards, that if you are living a pristine kind of lifestyle in a pristine environment, then most minor things should be okay. But when danger, if you could be living in this pristine environment, you smash your leg, and break the bone, you're still going to need it set. It's has to be put back into place. Nature does the work of setting the bone, but we have to provide a helping hand to the environment to make sure that it doesn't break again, that you don't do anything too untoward. So I think where I'm going is that nature has certain limits, and when those limits are transcended, then it isn't always about trusting nature's signals, because some of those signals are disordered. And I've got a fairly good idea, but I could be wrong, but I've got a fairly good idea that I go on to say that, with this calc-carb craving plaster, craving indigestibles, there must be something in those indigestibles that Mother Nature wants, is not a good theory. I think what I go on to say is that...
I can see it here. It says... According to Hahnemann's philosophy, the imperfection and narrowness of range that nature has under stress would not mean calc-carb patients would be craving indigestibles because there is something in the substance beneficial to the patient. The calc-carb patient would be craving indigestible substances because they have a disordered digestive system
exactly right.
that is sending erroneous and destructive messages to the vital force. As a result, the sick patient starts craving things that will not only do them little good at all, they start craving substances that may even do them harm.
Yeah. If you're in a disordered state of mind, whether through depression or whatever it might be, the chances of you choosing the right foods at that moment of misery is slim. You crave for what you shouldn't have, but what is going to at least give you some momentary comfort, even if it doesn't give you any long-term comfort. I don't know anyone who's in a state of deep depression or heartbreak or loss or whatever, and even if they're hungry at all, it's never for the right food. Even if they're sick, whatever it might be, they always seem to crave the indigestibles. There's even that rubric that craves what makes you sick.
Yeah.
And this is the perfect environment for sugar to thrive.
Of course.
No, it is. It absolutely is.
Back to that demon sugar.
Well, it is a demon sugar. I might have gone a little overboard when I called vegan.
You did reflect on that this week and said, perhaps I should put in an apology.
Well, no, but it's because I'm going to be misread in that statement, or perhaps I didn't do the statement the justice that I was thinking. And what I meant by that was not the individual that actually benefits from it, because some people do benefit from it, by the way.
Of course.
But the majority do not.
Yeah.
But some people do benefit from it. And for those people, I'm not trying to say they're psychopathic because they're vegans, and I got no beef with vegetarians, no pun intended there. But,
no beef.
But it's because that whole sort of dairy, particularly if you're doing a lot of it, can supply you with a vast amount of the protein that you need. Now, some people will say, no, we're just eating way too much protein, we're eating way too much fat. I just don't believe that at all. I mean, considering that that's how our body reproduces itself, I don't think so. But what I meant was, this idea that sort of gets bandied around of the fake meats, and that cows and these other ruminants are somehow dangerous for our lifestyle because of methane and things like this, and that in order to do yourself and your planet a favour, you should be doing all of this sort of fake plastic.
But that's just like Coca-Cola saying, hey, put Coca-Cola in your baby's bottle, they'll love it. Well, maybe they will love it, but you know what? That's just a corporate sales pitch.
No, and that's what I meant by psychopaths. If you know that you're doing damage to people by taking them off something that they need, different from the fact that you as an individual might benefit from this particular lifestyle and diet. But I will tell you outright, the majority don't.
There's always something missing, isn't there?
Yeah, and you might, but the majority don't.
There's a great focus on being natural and healthy, which is fantastic. But like you're saying in this chapter, you've got to understand when nature goes off. So I can lead into the next bit I can see you've written here. You said this un-Hahnemannian interpretation that a sick digestive system will send out healthy signals in the form of beneficial cravings misses the idea of what disease actually is.
Yeah. If everything was pristine and everything was recuperative and it was limitless nature was limitless in her ability to be able to repair, heal and rejuvenate, there'd be no need for any kind of therapist
intervention
at all.
Yeah.
But the reality is that medicine in some form or another, whether it's bone-setting herbs or whatever it is
always been needed, at some level.
I suppose the second oldest profession, you know? I mean, it's something that's been needed right from the beginning of time. And Hahnemann does talk about this. He talks about the program being the program that is instilled into our cells to regenerate and heal and recuperate, that program is definitely there but can be easily pushed beyond its limits. Mm-hmm. Now, when it's pushed beyond its limits, it's not to be trusted. Febrile convulsions are a great example of that.
You mentioned that here. Violent vomiting, dehydration. Yeah, that's the body trying to get back into balance, but it's overdoing it and it's failing.
Yeah, it's failing and it's making the situation worse. I mean, it can try and purge whatever bug you might have had on some, sort of recent third world trip that you've had, and you've is that what I wrote?
I'm just giving you the thumbs up there, because you go on to say people suffering from a tapeworm infection can also start craving certain foods, but these cravings are created by the worm itself to feed its own needs. They are not healthy or natural healing signs. And then you summarise, according to Hahnemann and common sense, when a body system is sick, it will send out sick impulses. When a body system is healthy, it will send healthy impulses.
Yeah. So this whole thing, and there are a number of authors that have written it, calc carb will eat the plaster off your wall. There's something in the plaster the body needs. It's trying to repair itself. The truth in that statement is that calc carb or any other remedy for it doesn't have to be calc carb will crave indigestibles and will, in fact, in some cases, eat the plaster off your walls. But that doesn't mean it's for their benefit.
No, we don't need plaster. A house needs plaster for nice smooth walls, but we as human beings do not.
No, we do not. We do not. And we've got our own plaster. It's called cholesterol. But getting rid of all of the plaster in a house is not a good idea, in the same way as lowering too much cholesterol is not a good idea. But that's a story for another day, because we're being taken for a ride there.
There's so many of those stories, unfortunately. So just moving on, another quote. Medicine as commonly practiced, allopathy, knows no treatment except to draw from diseases the injurious materials which are assumed to be their cause. That was Samuel Hahnemann.
Yeah, I was going to say that's a bit flowery for me.
No, it's not your quote. You're putting a quote in your book. It might be presumed that medicine of any kind, this is now you, conventional or folkloric, that was previous to Hahnemann's time, had no philosophy behind its action. It is assumed that nothing other than speculation and guesswork was the foundation of historical prescriptions, but that is not the case. Hahnemann came from a conventional medical background and understood its practices and philosophies well. It's just that he didn't agree with them.
Yeah. There's medicine has its own philosophy, and the idea that all of medicine was in this state of dark age with no philosophy to back itself up, and it was just kind of random hearsay and giving this, that, and the other thing. That to me is well, maybe it might have been in his part of the world that as a Eurocentric thing to say, perhaps. But I think acupuncture, for example, has been around almost since the Bronze Age, and the philosophy behind that is incredibly deep. I mean, it's done in a model that's a very agricultural model where it talks about wind and wet and, all this kind of stuff. But nonetheless, I mean, once you understand what the terminology is about, and when you look at those the posters of where you put the needles, this is coming from a person that has absolutely no acupuncture background at all. It looks unbelievably complex, and I'm sure it is unbelievably complex. They're not silly. And while I agree with Hahnemann in some respects, I'm just pointing out there that no, I don't think people just randomly did things. I think there was a philosophy.
There is some randomness, actually, ironically, I think in alternative medicine, there's a bit of randomness there. Even within homeopathy, you came to the conclusion that there was people were practicing homeopathy based on absolute rules and laws within homeopathy, but then they would digress within that. They would go beyond it. So this is interesting. I'll go on and I'll quote again.
Well, just go on.
Yep.
The one rule of homeopathy is to be led, never to lead. Mm-hmm. So
the body leads where you're going.
Symptoms lead you to where you're going. Now, the one area where you're saying that this could sound perhaps a little oxymoronic. Oh, no, not oxymoronic. This could sound a little hypocritical or oppositional to what I just said about not following disordered messages given by the body. Because when you do a case, you've got two sets of signs and symptoms in every single case. You've got the pathological signs and symptoms, and then you've got the symptoms that show you the strengths and weaknesses of the body. And particularly what we're after the weaknesses of the body, because it is that old philosophy that the stronger that you can make the body, and I guess bolster the emotions as well. So not just the physical body, but the stronger that you can make somebody, the better the chance of healing and recuperation, and then later on protection that they have. And so what we're trying to do with a remedy, particularly a constitutional remedy, is to decipher what is a pathological symptom, meaning that the germ, the infection, or the negative lifestyle is winning and the body is screaming out in pain because it doesn't want to be led down this path. Those symptoms are nowhere near as relevant as the way the body's trying to fight back.
Which is your modalities.
Which are particularly your modalities, all your weaknesses, right? Mm-hmm. So if you take it from, just making this up, if you take it at its most literal, if you have arthritis every time there is a barometric change, or you get migraines, or let's say, and migraines, every time that there's a barometric change. And I know people like this. I know people that will say, I'm telling you, there's a storm coming in 3 days. And they're right. They're absolutely right. They're so sensitive to this. But think about it in this way. If you could strengthen them up to a point where they were not reacting to the barometric change, would they get the migraine? Well, the answer's no. So you can sit down there and you can go pain, head, left side, throbbing, nausea along with the pain, so on and so on, but you're not getting to the point. The point is that in your system, there is such a sensitivity that it's creating a weakness to a natural event, which is creating the pain. So what we need to do is that we need to strengthen that so you don't react to it at all. And and I know in the past that I've given, people like Kent a bit of a hard time from time to time because, well, I disagree with it. And I think that there's some aspects of Kent, particularly with the mentals, that he's led a whole profession down the garden path. Now, you can say we've willingly followed, which we have, but nonetheless, we've gone down the garden path. But one thing that Kent did get right, and he writes this in the opening of his repertory, is that if you begin with pathology, you begin with a mistake. Now, that's paraphrasing, right? He doesn't say, I forget what. He would have done it in much more fervent terms than that, Yeah. But nonetheless, that's the essence of it. And it's true. Now, the problem when you are dealing with people, particularly because, to get through sheer numbers, sometimes what we've needed to do is that we've needed to do cases that are more email cases, But until people are trained into what we're after, what you'll get is ream after ream after ream of pathology.
It's really hard, isn't it? Because and we've got to be forgiving of patients in a way.
I am forgiving. I'm saying unless we train people into it.
And you can't train them straight up. It's something that it evolves as you start to understand their pathology more and their experience. You can then start to look for those modalities, but people are not aware of them. They're such instinctive behaviours that they just take them for granted.
Yeah, and it's the conventional model, the allopathic model, as Hahnemann called it, is the dominant model. And it's really easy for people to, not only because of just, constant training by not just medicine itself, but, every show has it, every series has it. And also, too, the average person's data, all that they know is what is wrong. Yeah. And so when you go into a doctor, you sort of go, well, what's wrong? But what's wrong to a homeopath is different to what's wrong to a doctor. What's wrong with the doctor, for the doctor, is that you have, all the tests come back. I'm just sticking with the arthritis, migraine sort of thing. All the tests come back. You've got some sort of, what they loosely term autoimmune problem. And, then they give you all of the steroids or the whatever it might be.
It's all about pain relief, isn't it?
It's about pain relief because the way what they're saying is the problem is not what we're saying what the problem is. What we're saying the problem is that you have a constitutional weakness that is allowing barometric pressure to be able to influence you to such a degree that your whole body is screaming in pain. Now, what we need to do is that we need to be able to build a bridge over that.
Yeah. Over that weak area.
Yeah.
And it's not that we're ignoring the pain in any way. Our goal is to reduce that pain markedly, but we're trying to reduce it through building the body into a stronger place, which is a much more sustainable, and that's a fashionable word, but it's a much more sustainable place for us to be in rather than propping it up over and over with little pills here, there and everywhere. And ultimately, they don't work as well over time. You become desensitized to chemicals and drugs, and that underlying Weakness is still there, hasn't been
that's right.
touched.
You haven't fixed the problem.
No,
it's not
no.
what the problem
And I think
is about.
the bridge is a great analogy. It's kind of like all bridges collapse in the end if they're not maintained properly, right? You build a bridge, you build it to a good design, you hope it hasn't got any weak areas, but some bridges do, and then they need that weak area to be addressed, not just prop the weak bridge up endlessly until it collapses, you know?
Well, if you're going to keep with that sort of scenario, the other thing is too is that nature didn't build the bridge. We did, right? So human beings build the bridge. That and I guess that's what I'm trying to say at the beginning of this reading that you did is that nature's program is unbelievably sophisticated, but to think that it's foolproof is wrong because there are just too many influences. Excuse me. A really good example of that is when you hear, as I know you have, and anybody who's in practice has heard stories where, I don't know, someone loses a business, loses a partner, has an aggressive partner, you know, in a really bad relationship or whatever it might be, and their health is just eroding drip by drip by drip until by the time you start getting into your 40s or 50s, now you've got this chronic disease. But when you look at the lifestyle that preceded that chronic disease, you can see that they've gone into a fight or flight response if someone's really aggressive, which is commandeering all available energy and leaving nothing for the healing process.
That's the thing with stress. To be stressed, this is why, you know, spiritually there's always this focus on de-stress, you know. Chill out, relax. Easier said than done. But stress takes energy. Takes a lot of energy to be stressed.
It takes vast amounts of energy.
And it's taking it from somewhere else.
Yeah, and it's taking it from that pool, that reserve that you have for both maintenance and future repair. And it's borrowing from that because all your muscles are tense and all your adrenaline's flying and it needs a lot of energy to do it, right? Because you're now in steam train mode. So you've got to cut down tons and tons and tons of forest just to shove it in this steam train so it can keep moving. So it's true that the fight or flight response is nature's built-in response. It's built-in program to get you out of danger. But when circumstances exceed what it was built for, then all of a sudden that program can do you more harm than good. And now what you need is you need something energetic, because remember, the program's energetic. It's not physical. You can't grab a scalpel and say, all right, well, there's the little fight or flight gland.
Yeah.
It isn't like that. No. It's energetic. So as a result of that, it needs something energetic to interact with it.
Hence the remedy.
Hence the remedies.
Yeah. Makes absolute sense. I'm going to digress a little bit because I'm just reading more in this lovely book of yours, and because when I got up to the part where it's about practices and philosophies, and you say practice always follows theory. Theory is what you are trying to achieve and how best to achieve it. Practice is putting that theory to the test, and often this is where many good theories fall apart. In the end, no matter how good a theory may sound, how feasible, how natural, or how sophisticated, if practice does not support that theory by its effectiveness or reproducibility, there's your science, then that theory moves from sophisticated to what Hahnemann would call specious. And then you go to the trouble of putting in what a specious adjective is. Superficially plausible but actually wrong, a specious argument, misleading in appearance, especially misleadingly attractive, a specious appearance of novelty. And we see this everywhere, don't we? Things that look really good. They look so good. They must be right, but you dig a little deeper.
No,
they're
not right. They're not right. And The trouble is that we often stick to the philosophy because we've invested so much in the development of the philosophy and it sounds like it should work.
We don't like, as human beings, I think, what did Mark Twain say about this? But we don't like being made to look a fool.
Yeah, he said it's easier to con a man than to convince him that he's been conned.
Yeah, once you've been conned, you will hang on to it. You've invested some part of yourself. Belief and being human, it's a very powerful state. And we know that corporations and churches and rogues and all sorts of people over history have taken advantage of this fact that people love believing in something that just looks attractive enough that they want it to be real.
Yeah, but at the same time, I know you're not suggesting that churches and religion and different places are selling you a lie either. So some of these things are absolutely real.
Well, this is the problem with everything, isn't it? You can cherry pick the lies, you can cherry pick the truth. You know, most things are complex and they're an entwinement of both.
Well, this specious argument in homeopathy is what I was referring to, I think, in earlier podcasts where I thought really it was Kent taken to the extreme. Kent turned into Kentism. You know, because Kent was the one that was talking about how the mentals are the most important character assessment. Well, that character assessment's the most important thing for the selection of a remedy. Hahnemann didn't do that. Hahnemann said the PQRS. And when you tell him, when you look at how he defined the PQRS, he's talking about, you know, PQRS is if you've got a pain in your leg or in your hips, stand up, walk around, put heat on it, put cold on it, you know, observe whether it's night, whether it's day, when is it at its worst. Essentially, his PQRSs and the modalities were entwined. Now, that all got sort of a little twisted around the way. And then, you know, the old adage of the well-selected remedy that fails to relieve in all of these old books. Well, now we have to come up with a reason. And Kent's reason is that we're not understanding the character of that person. Right? And now if we understand that the character of that person, we'll be better able to suit it to a remedy. And now it's gone to an extreme where you've got what I just said before, a Kentism, where it's the firm belief that the remedy and the person's personality should be a hand and glove fit. And it's wrong, it's wrong, and it's wrong.
Yep. And it's interesting that your thought process is going down that avenue because as I'm reading page 52 in How Aphorism 27 Changed the World, you're starting to come back to that point. You talk a little bit about leeches and the history of medicine and so forth. But then you go on above that, you actually say, if doctors of the past were completely content with their methods and success rates, there would have been no need for further development. People have not changed the shape of the wheel since the wheel was first invented. What we use to make the wheel has changed, but the wheel itself has stayed the same. Humans never change what doesn't need changing.
Yeah.
You said homeopathy developed because of need. Conventional medicine evolved from the same need, the need to improve medical practice, to increase its success rate and to improve the health of patients beyond what was the norm at the time. So we have to say straight off that current conventional medicine must be pretty dissatisfied with itself because it's always changing. Every single thing, every day, changing. They don't stick with a lot of things that are the same.
Have you ever met a cancer patient that's not on a trial drug?
Everything's new, a trial of this or that, because they're not actually happy with where they're at. You go on to say if leeches were a successful cure-all medicine, practitioners would never have stopped using them. Well, I think some have gone back to that actually.
Some have actually, but not
in a big way. They're just experimenting. With an open mind, this same logic needs to be applied to contemporary homeopathy. And I know this is a big thing in this book, your criticism of contemporary homeopathy. Today,
no, it's not my criticism of contemporary homeopathy, it's my justification of HFA.
Okay.
Because we won't go into who, what, where and how, but you know very well that we got quite slammed for this difference.
Yes, yeah, because I suppose we are contemporary homeopathy. Of course we are. We're in contemporary times. We even have an adjustment to an old method which is new. So yeah, and you only created that because you wanted to do better. You knew you could do better and you wanted to. And I think at the moment I would have to say, and this is interesting, your changes to HFA are so minimal in the last decade. And that's because, would it be true, you're relatively happy with the outcomes?
Yeah, very much so. The only thing that's actually changed a little bit, and in fact, when you go through, now that you even bring it up, because I haven't actually thought about it before, but when you go through those facial features, I think there was one in the teeth, wasn't there?
There's no, going right back to 2002.
No, once it was established.
Yeah, from the first book to the second, there was about 6 things that you sort of adjusted. You pulled some out, you put some in, you made a couple of adjustments there. But as time's moved on, and we're talking this is 2006, I don't think there's hardly any in the last decade. There's a couple you're experimenting with, but I don't even think you're 100% on those. So we're sort of waiting on that. But, I mean, that in itself...
In the facial analysis, there's not a lot of change. In fact, hardly any change.
Very little, yeah.
But... No, there's been change, but not continuous change.
Case management.
In case management. I've learned how to do things better after the first remedy has been given.
Yeah.
The first remedy, because I was always taught, and again, this is this sort of Kent, Tyler sort of, that everything came down to your prescription.
The first remedy.
This is the hand in glove stuff, right? So this is that all of the understanding of idiosyncrasy and individuality was all represented in the remedy selection. Okay, again, to repeat myself, it's wrong, wrong and wrong.
Oh, you love saying that, don't you?
I do, actually. We've all got to get our thrills somewhere.
You do.
And so, look, even that's not entirely true, really, because there is still an art to the remedy selection.
Oh, but getting the first remedy takes a bit of effort.
If you listen really and you apply the fundamentals of homeopathy, you don't have to be any genius to come up with the remedy. You only have to listen to what the person's saying and know what questions to ask.
Yep.
The body's telling you that.
Yeah.
The real individuality is, what do I do now? Now that, and either A, it works partially, B, it didn't work at all, or C, it worked quite well. Now what do I do? Where do I go? What do I do? Now, what most people have done is that they've done a post-Kentian model and they've said, well, that 200 really worked, we just leave it. Well, I'm going to do it again because it's just so thrilling. That's wrong, wrong and wrong.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay, look, we can go on with this.
Look, I tell you what. My thought process, plus I'm reading from this book as you speak, is that the next topic we need to talk about in the next podcast, because we don't want to make them too long. Everyone's short on time, and we've had some great feedback, by the way. So thank you, everyone who's bothered to write to us and say how much they're enjoying it. It's been lovely to hear. But yeah, I reckon the next topic is about the quantity of remedies as you get to it. Again, this is where your book's going. I'd like to pick that up next time.
Okay, well then we'll do next time. All right. Okay. Until that next time, I'll have a nice week, everybody, and I hope your life goes the way you want it to.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you. Thanks for listening to Soul and Survival. If you are interested in more information, books, courses, consultations, learning more about facial analysis or life themes, please visit our college site, Victorian College of Classical Homeopathy, vcch.org.